Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to unpack some fascinating sources, pull out those really crucial bits of knowledge, and make them easy to digest. The mission, get you informed quickly without drowning you in data. Today, we're tackling something absolutely foundational for you, thinking about you as a first-year medical student. This is antimicrobial stewardship. It's going to shape a lot of your future practice. So we're going to get you right up to speed. And maybe start off, here's something for you to think about as we talk. Why should we, as future clinicians, really understand and champion the responsible use of antibiotics? What's actually at stake here?
That is the question, isn't it? Because the stakes are, frankly, immense.
Yeah.
We're facing this escalating global threat, antimicrobial resistance. And this isn't some far-off issue. It's like a silent pandemic that's already here. It's already affecting patients. It really threatens the bedrock of modern medicine. You hear the term superbugs, right? Well, that's what we're talking about. Microorganisms that can just shrug off the drugs we throw at them. Makes common infections potentially untreatable. Just imagine. Imagine a world where a simple cut, something routine, could become life-threatening again. That's the direction we could be heading.
Yeah. That's a sobering picture. Okay, before we dive deeper, just to make sure we're all starting from the same point, I hear these terms, antibiotic resistance and antimicrobial resistance, used almost interchangeably sometimes. But I get the feeling the difference is pretty important for this deep dive. Can you clarify that for us?
Absolutely. It's a really key distinction to grasp the full picture. So antibiotic resistance that refers specifically to bacteria becoming resistant to antibacterial drugs. Think penicillin, amoxicillin, bacteria building a shield just against those. Antimicrobial resistance, AMR, though that's the bigger umbrella, it covers resistance to drugs against bacteria, yes, but also fungi, viruses, parasites. Much broader. So AMR, that's the acronym we'll use. AMR is the big overarching threat. And the really critical thing, new resistance mechanisms, they don't just pop up and stay put, they spread globally. And that threatens our ability to treat all sorts of common infectious diseases we used to handle easily, without effective antimicrobials, things like major surgery, organ transplants, even chemotherapy. They all become incredibly risky. Maybe impossible.
Okay, so AMR is the big one. Let's unpack that scale then.
Yeah.
Just how big is this problem? This superbug threat you mentioned, it sounds, pretty alarming.
It really is. The numbers, when you look at reliable medical sources, they are quite sobering. There's an estimate of around 700,000 deaths every year from drug-resistant infections. 700,000.
Yes. Annually. It's like wiping out a medium-sized city every single year. That's the silent pandemic we're already in. And looking ahead, projections suggest global antibiotic consumption could triple by 2030. That's just pouring fuel on the fire. Plus, we already have, 123 countries reporting extensive multi-drug-resistant TB-MDR-TB. That really shows how widespread this is.
Right. That TB statistic is worrying.
And to help focus efforts, the WHO actually has this, you could call it a most wanted list. Officially, it's the WHO's Bacterial Priority Pathogens list. It basically ranks the bacteria posing the biggest threat. And on the critical list, Priority 1, you find things like Acinetobacter baumannii, nasty bug, often found in hospitals, really hard to treat, and also Carbapenem-resistant Enterobacterales. These are common gut bacteria that have learned to resist our sort of last resort antibiotics, the carbapenem.
Those are the ones that really worry specialists.
Exactly. They keep infectious disease experts up at night, and they should definitely be on your radar as you start your clinical journey. Okay, this is where it gets, really fascinating for me, maybe a bit mind-boggling. How on earth do these tiny organisms get so clever? How do they actually become resistant? What's going on microscopically?
It's like an evolutionary arms race happening constantly. And understanding it helps us see where we might intervene. But it's not just random. There's a fairly predictable four-step process usually. 1, you start with a lot of bacteria, a huge population, and just by chance, a few in there are already resistant, naturally. 2, we introduce an antibiotic. It kills the susceptible ones, the ones causing the illness. Great, but also, unfortunately, some of the good bacteria that normally help us. 3, now the resistant bacteria, suddenly they have less competition, more resources, perfect conditions. They grow, they multiply, they take over. 4, and here's the real kicker. These resistant bacteria can then pass their resistance traits to other bacteria. They literally share their, cheat codes.
Sharing cheat codes. I like that. So they're essentially reprogramming themselves, acquiring these resistance blueprints. What does that look like on a molecular level? What are these genetic superpowers, as you call them, actually doing?
Yeah, these genetic superpowers, or evolutionary upgrades, they happen in a few main ways genetically. You can get point mutations, tiny specific changes in key genes. Like a small change in the gene for beta-lactamase, that's the enzyme that breaks down penicillin-like drugs, might make it work against newer types of those drugs too. Then there are bigger changes, gene rearrangements, like acquiring whole chunks of DNA, maybe on plasmids or transposons, that carry resistance genes, more like macroevolutionary leaps. And third, they can just pick up exogenous DNA, free-floating DNA from their environment. Neisseria, the bacteria causing gonorrhea, famously picked up penicillin resistance this way, just scavenging for defenses.
It's incredible adaptability, finding multiple ways to tweak their systems.
Right.
But okay, once they have these genetic changes, how do they use them? Inside the cell, what are the actual tactics to stop the drug?
Right. Having the code is one thing, using it is another. And understanding these mechanisms of drug resistance shows us where drugs fail and maybe how to design better ones. Inside the cell, they have several tactics. One, they can literally destroy or inactivate the drug, like a molecular Pac-Man chewing it up. Two, they can block the drug from even getting to its target inside the cell, building thicker walls, essentially. Three, they can change the target site itself. So the drug arrives, but the lock has changed, the key doesn't fit anymore. And four, rapid efflux. They can actively pump the drug back out of the cell before it builds up enough to work, like a tiny bilge pump.
Wow, that's quite an arsenal for such small things. But you also mentioned the sharing part, the cheat codes. How do these resistance genes spread so effectively between bacteria, even different kinds?
Yeah, that dissemination is key to the whole problem. This sharing the cheat codes, the methods for dissemination of resistance genes happens in several ways. First, simple clonal spread. A resistant strain just multiplies faster when antibiotics kill off its neighbors. Basic selection. Second, plasmid transfer. This is huge. Plasmids, those little circles of DNA carrying resistance genes, can get passed directly between bacteria that's conjugation or sometimes via viruses. Third, picking up free DNA, like we mentioned with pneumococci getting penicillin resistance from DNA released by dead bacteria nearby. And fourth, bacteriophages. Viruses that infect bacteria can sometimes accidentally carry resistance genes from one bacterium to another. That's transduction. It's a really efficient, multi-pronged spread strategy.
Okay, so putting this all together, what does it mean for us as clinicians on the ground? What are we doing, maybe even unintentionally, that's fueling this fire? There seems to be a big human element here.
Absolutely. The human factor is critical both to the problem and hopefully the solution. We see some concerning prescribing trends, especially in primary care. Data consistently shows really high volumes of common antibiotics, amoxicillin, clarithromycin, doxycycline being prescribed year after year. Now, they're essential drugs, but the sheer volume drives that selective pressure.
Right, the pressure cooker effect.
Exactly. And then there are patient expectations, especially for things like coughs and colds, respiratory tract infections, RTIs. There was a study showing something like 93% of patients who actually asked for an antibiotic for an RTI got one.
93%? Wow.
Yeah. It highlights this challenge. People feel quite ill. They maybe think antibiotics are a cure-all, even for viruses, which they're not. And this creates a sort of vicious cycle of antibiotic use. Patients expect them, sometimes clinicians feel pressured or maybe want to offer something, and antibiotics get prescribed even when they won't help the underlying issue. Breaking that cycle needs education on both sides.
Given how complex this is, how adaptable these microbes are, it makes me circle back to something. Are we even capable of making an ideal antibiotic that could truly win this arms race? What would that even look like? Is it just a pipe dream?
That's a really good and tough question, and it leads us right into the solution space. If resistance is such a huge threat, how do we fight back effectively with the tools we actually have right now?
Yeah, what's the strategy?
The strategy, and this is absolutely vital for your future practice, is antimicrobial stewardship, AMS. Think of AMS as like the GPS for antibiotics. It's all about ensuring the optimal selection, the right dose, and the right duration of antimicrobial treatment. The aim is twofold. Get the best clinical outcome for the patient, obviously, but with minimal toxicity and minimal impact on future resistance. It's a whole system approach.
But GPS for antibiotics, like that anchor. So what are the core goals if we were to boil it down?
We can boil it down to the 3 Ps of AMS. A good way to remember it. 1, prescribe appropriately, making sure each patient gets the most appropriate drug, dose, and duration for their specific situation. 2, prevent overuse. That means minimizing misuse, abuse, and just plain unnecessary prescribing, especially for those mild self-limiting things. And 3, preserve effectiveness. This is about minimizing the development of resistance, both in that individual patient and in the wider community. Every prescription counts.
Okay, the 3 Ps. Prescribe, prevent, preserve sounds great in principle. But how does that translate day to day when you're making decisions in a busy hospital ward, for instance? What are the guiding principles?
Right, for the hospital setting, secondary care, there's a really useful framework. Start smart, then focus. 2 phases. Start smart is about those first crucial 48, 72 hours. Rule 1, don't start antibiotics unless you've got clear clinical evidence of a bacterial infection. Sounds obvious, but
But it happens.
it happens too. Get your cultures before starting the antibiotics. Blood, sputum, urine, whatever's relevant. But, crucially, don't delay treatment for severe sepsis or life-threatening infections where time is absolutely critical. 3, start treatment promptly using your local guidelines. And try to avoid those really broad-spectrum antibiotics unless they're truly indicated. 4, document everything clearly. The indication, the drug, dose, route. And critically, number 5, include a review or stop date right from the start. Plan for reassessment.
Okay, that's the start smart. What about then focus?
Then focus is that review point. Around 48, 72 hours later, maybe you've got culture results back, more information, and here you have 5 clear options, the 5 Ds of the antimicrobial prescribing decision, another good anchor. 1, drop. Stop the antibiotics if it turns out there's no bacterial infection, maybe it's viral or the infection's resolved. 2, divert. Switch from IV to oral therapy if possible. Gets patients home sooner, fewer IV line risks. 3, dial in. Change the antibiotic. Maybe narrow the spectrum based on sensitivity results, or sometimes you might need to broaden if things aren't improving. 4, do on. Continue the current treatment if it's working and still needed, but always document the next review or stop date. Don't just leave it open-ended. And 5, distant care. Consider outpatient parenteral antibiotic therapy, opiate, if they still need IV drugs but could manage at home.
The 5 Ds. Drop, divert, dial in, don, distant care. Very practical. What about in primary care, where most antibiotics probably get started?
Yeah, primary care is hugely important. The mantra there is often simple as smart. The main thing is only prescribe if there's a clear clinical benefit. Really consider a no antibiotic or maybe a delayed antibiotic strategy, like here's a script, but only fill it if you're not better in X days. For those acute, self-limiting upper respiratory things, colds, most coughs, sinusitis, earaches, sore throats, so often viral. And when you do need an antibiotic, use simple generic ones first line. Avoid the broad-spectrum agents like coamoxiclav, quinolones, cephalosporins for common stuff. They really drive resistance and increase risks like C. diff infection and MRSA.
Right, saving the big guns for when they're truly needed. So let's loop back to that question about the ideal antimicrobial drug. You said it's tough to make one. Is it basically just a wish list then? And how does that explain why we've seen so few new antibiotics going through?
It pretty much is a wish list, yeah.
Sure.
The characteristics of an ideal antimicrobial drug. It's a very tall order. It would need to be selectively toxic. Kill the bug, not the patient. Microbicidal kill, not just stop growth. Soluble, potent. And here's the huge one. It shouldn't lead to resistance. Plus, it should help our own immune system, work well in tissues, be easy to deliver, reasonably priced, non-allergenic.
A medical unicorn, basically.
Exactly, a medical unicorn. The sheer difficulty of hitting all those targets, especially the no resistance one, is precisely why the pipeline for new antibiotics has been so dry for the last, say, 40 years. It's scientifically incredibly hard and economically challenging, too.
Which makes preserving the ones we do have even more critical. Okay, beyond the science, the protocols,
Yeah.
What about the human side, communicating with patients, especially when they might come in expecting an antibiotic?
That communication piece is absolutely crucial. You have to approach it with empathy, but also clarity. Explain your thinking. Talk about what's likely causing their illness, how severe it is. Crucially, explain why an antibiotic might not be the best choice for them right now. Mention potential side effects, the risk of resistance. Offer alternatives, symptom relief strategies. And really listen. Acknowledge their concerns, their expectations. Build that trust. It makes it much more likely they'll accept your recommendation, even if it's not what they initially hoped for.
And what about making sure they know what to do if things don't improve or get worse?
That's safety netting advice. It's non-negotiable. Think of it as the patient's emergency kit. You need to clearly tell them what symptoms to expect, how long recovery usually takes, and specifically what signs would suggest things are getting worse. Maybe a fever spike, worsening breathing, a new rash. Who should they contact if they're worried? Where should they go if things deteriorate quickly? Urgent care, A&E. And always give them written information to back it up. It empowers them, reassures them, and ensures they seek help appropriately.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Do we have examples where these stewardship approaches have really made a difference?
Oh, definitely. There was a great trial called To Dip or Not to Dip in care homes. They looked at suspected UTIs in elderly residents. Instead of relying on urine dipsticks, which are often misleading in that population, they trained staff to use a proper clinical algorithm to decide if an infection was likely. The result: significantly fewer antibiotic prescriptions for UTIs, and actually fewer hospital admissions related to UTIs too. It showed that changing practice based on evidence with good communication really works.
That's really encouraging. So zooming out again, what's the
Yeah.
bigger picture plan? Tackling AMR nationally, globally, what's the vision?
There are big plans. The UK, for example, has this 20-year vision for antimicrobial resistance. The goal is that by 2040, AMR will be effectively contained and controlled. Ambitious, but necessary. And underpinning that is a 5-year national action plan with key themes you see echoed internationally. 1, reduce the need for antimicrobials, better infection prevention, sanitation, vaccines. 2, optimize their use. That's all the stewardship stuff we've talked about. 3, invest in innovation, new drugs, better diagnostics, vaccines. 4, be a good global partner because AMR doesn't respect borders.
And are there tools to help with that optimizing use part?
Yes, one practical tool is the AWARE Index. It classifies antibiotics into 3 groups to guide prescribing. A is for access. These are generally first or second choice drugs for common infections, should be widely available. Think amoxicillin for pneumonia. WA is for watch. These have higher resistance potential, used for more specific indications, need careful monitoring, like ciprofloxacin for a complicated UTI, and REL is for reserve. These are the last resort options for severe infections when nothing else works, like colistin. You protect these fiercely. It helps structure thinking about antibiotic choice.
Access, watch, reserve, aware. Another good anchor. Well, this has been an incredibly important deep dive. It's so clear that antimicrobial stewardship isn't just, a guideline. It's absolutely critical for the future of medicine. And for you listening, as future clinicians, you really are going to be on the front lines of this, understanding it, applying these principles. It's fundamental right from day one.
Absolutely. And maybe just to leave you with one final thought to mull over, building on all this. Given how fast bacteria evolve and how slow our drug pipeline is, how will you personally, in your day-to-day practice, actively contribute to preserving these precious medicines? How will you ensure they're still effective for the patients you'll be treating years, even decades down the line? It's a question that needs constant, conscious attention.